Welcome, everyone, to the Return to Play podcast, where all we care about is helping you return to playing whatever activity that is that you like to do without limitation. I'm here in the Biooptimization Institute with the founders Trip Harlan and Jason Grafassi. They're going to tell us a little bit about the Biooptimization Institute side of what we offer here at St. Pete Calisthenics and all their cool modalities. So I'll let you guys kind of take a little bit, give us a little background on how you got into this, and then what are those cool pieces of equipment that you guys want to show us.
Okay, great. Thank you, Aaron. At the Biooptimization Institute, we consult individuals and organizations, and we find the best healing equipment, tools, technologies from around the world and apply them into strategic protocols, whether it is concussion, athletic performance, post-surgery, or even just basic metabolic health. That's something we're looking to provide the solutions for these individuals.
Very cool. What got you into this field?
Well, personally, I was suffering from concussion issues from soccer, football, martial arts, and it brought me into a state of dullness through the concussions, TBI. I started self-medicating through alcohol, and it was a process that was definitely bringing a lot of issues into my life, health, family, friends. So basically I was on a journey to heal myself. And so that brought me into yoga. And in yoga, it showed me so many different things from diet, community, discipline, but the main focus and probably the most important thing about yoga is the breath. And they say there is no practice without the breath, and there literally is no life without the breath. And so that took me down a journey of actually understanding and being aware that the breath even existed. Once I got to a certain point, I was hoping to really feel better and feel that, almost electricity building back up in my body, but I was still dull. I wasn't cognitively functioning correctly, and I still had speech issues. And that's where finally in my journey, it led me into more of the advanced technologies, including oxygenation, PEMF, and that's where I really started to feel the energy, the blood flow, everything happening, and that cognitive awareness starting to come back into my existence.
Very cool. How about you, Jason? How'd you get into this field?
So similar to Trip and many people, it was a pain to purpose journey, right? There are three main areas. First one was nutrition. Growing up, being a skinny kid that wanted to put weight on, which I know a lot of us males tend to go through. And so trying to eat anything and everything just to put weight on, the Hungry Man frozen dinners, whatever, calories I could get. And then it came a point in college when all of those calories started to actually stay on, and I just blew up, right? And ended up 220 pounds overweight, literally just looking like a balloon. And that forced me to pay attention to what was going on. It's not just calories in, calories out, right? So I started to understand food and nutrition and really dive deep into what specifically, right? Actually, Dave Asprey's book on Bulletproof Diet taught me a lot about understanding the soil, right? We are necessarily what we eat, or what we eat eats, right? Getting into the organic and pesticides and whatnot. Then during that piece of my life, I actually had a rash take over my entire body. I went on a trip to Florida, came back home, and it started down in my leg. And before I knew it, it was covering my whole body up to my neck. And that just scared the crap out of me, right? I mean, it was something the doctor was just saying, don't touch anything, don't do anything, wrap yourself up, and stay away from people. And so that got me diving deep into parasites and detoxing and gut health, right? And, so doing all the research, getting all the tests, getting into the 23andMe genetics, right? Getting into the gut health with the Viome and really understanding how my body worked from that side. And then, like I said, detoxing was a huge one. Parasites is a huge one. And then the third one was brain. My dad has gone from a fully functioning entrepreneur, no problem communicating and running his day to day, and now he's down to barely able to speak a sentence, 73, and should not be functioning that way. And so that made me dive deep on the journey to brain health, and seeing what was going on with him. We won't get into it much now, but I will say it all happened after the vaccine kicked off, and they are finding a lot with vaccine and strokes. But again, we'll keep this a little lighter for right now, and we'll get into that later. But during that journey, actually, I was trying out different equipment and met my wife, and my wife met Trip. And Trip introduced us to the equipment that he was using. And so again, it was just kind of this, progression of learning equipment and protocols, as Trip had mentioned for himself, on my own journey, and then us just connecting. Trip sharing with me his big vision, and us saying, hey, you know what? I got a passion for health. You got a passion for health. Let's put this together. Take what he's already built, and then give it a couple more legs and go and run with it. And that's where the institute came from.
Very cool. And it was formerly Voltage Health, right? Where did the inspiration for that name come from, and how did it translate into what you guys are going with now moving forward?
There was a book by Dr. Jerry Tennant called Healing is Voltage, and it basically shared how our body is an electrical system, a battery, and through years of just dullness, agitation, external damaging food, medicine, we've dulled down our battery. And so I was very intrigued about how I could charge my battery and improve that. So basically, Voltage Health was bringing the electricity back to the wellness world and providing people that extra bit of blood flow, excitement, energy back into their lives through this process.
Awesome. And I know you guys still have a little lightning bolt in the new logo too, so a little homage to that piece of it.
That's exactly it. Yes. And then as Trip and I met and dove deeper into the big picture and seeing how we could really incorporate the world in this, right? Because we're all learning and growing and expanding. And so that's where we got into the institute concept. Quick background, my father and I and my uncle started a conference in the concrete polishing industry, teaching people how to start, run, and grow a polished concrete business. And through the event, we had the seminars that were education focused, getting into the topic specific areas, right? Having each expert of their particular piece of equipment or product talk on the topic side so people could really educate. That education then up levels the individuals, which up levels the decision making and what's going on, the products and so forth. When Trip was explaining to me his vision with sharing this with the world and really helping everybody, it only made sense to bring this into an institute model, right? We are rooted in research, right? Everything that we're doing, a lot of the things that we're getting into, it's all data driven, it's all research driven, and then it's all led by the industry experts of their space. And so we wanted to create a welcoming environment where the industry experts could come in and be their experts, talk on their specific products and information and equipment and whatnot, and then be able to share that with the world, which again increases the speed or increases the learning process, speeds things up, right? Allows us to learn something from somebody where we can take that and say, hey, you know this, well, we know this, and this guy over here knows this. So if we do A plus B plus C, now we're going to get this. And so it just kind of, evolved again from really being rooted in research and sharing that. And we don't have competition, as Trip had mentioned. We help up-level existing wellness spaces, right? Gyms, med spas, doctors' offices. We want to share what we know. We want to help them increase the wellness of their individuals, and so we share everything. And that's where the institute concept really came from.
So you guys are helping promote the products that you're finding. You're getting the experts to talk about it. You're putting all the data together to show what happens over time, doing this combination of particular devices in your protocol, and then having that data to show this is what we can do to help those young athletes that might be already starting to get that repetitive head trauma in football, have something they can do throughout college, throughout their career that maybe is going to help them not experience those same issues that NFL athletes in the past have had to deal with post-career, dig out of that deficit of cognitive dysfunction. No, it's really cool. I think that's something that relates pretty well to what I want with St. Pete Calisthenics and us broadening the umbrella of what calisthenics is into being more of it's just body weight movement of any form. It's an umbrella term, right? What I realized helping people get out of movement dysfunction, I had to get them doing stuff where, like in physical therapy, it would be a lot of isometric exercises and not super engaging mobility drills. I was noticing those isometric exercises are just inherently part of most calisthenics drills, exercises, all of that. And then the mobility side that no one wanted to do, we created the animal flow class and saw the benefits of that as a movement modality, and then that has been much more engaging for people to get that movement consistently. And then broadcasting to the rest of the world, like, this is what's helping people get out of this pain and dysfunction so you can get back to playing golf, playing tennis, playing pickleball, whatever the thing is that you get excited about. We just want you to be able to do that without any restrictions. So having you guys in the same building where we can help people get out of pain, learn how to move better, and get the most speedy recovery possible, I think is a really cool synergy that we have between our two businesses. Do you guys have any current anecdotal or even more on paper evidence from what you've seen from your clients so far as like how fast are they healing compared to normal? Is it quantitative enough for you to be able to give us a number?
So what we're finding, our clients are recovering in a third of the time. You know, when they go through, instead of being a couch potato, you know, coming off of post-surgery or even going into surgery, this is something where we're able to get their blood flowing, you know, once again, get the energy in their body, increase that voltage so they're actually able to heal. And without that, you know, ability to heal on a cellular level, you know, the antidote is we're almost aging like avocados. We're not able to recover on a cellular level. And so that's where that aging process comes in. It's not the sand in the hourglass, the actual time, our age that's dictating our, you know, our lifespan. It's the way that we're healing and recovering and actually putting stress on our body. And what we're doing through this process also is reducing stress, getting them into that relaxed parasympathetic nervous system state and giving them the ability to mentally and physically heal.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Trip, you know, you mentioned it a couple times, that cellular level of that we go to, right? That's the beauty of everything that we're doing, right? Not getting into, and you know, we'll talk on peptides and talk on the medicines, things that we can use outside of that. But the beauty of the protocol and a lot of what we do, which aligns so well with what you do with calisthenics, is the body knows what to do. The body can heal itself in many ways. We like to give it the resources, you know, really at the cellular level, right? We're giving that energy, as Trip mentioned, the voltage at the cellular level so that the body can take care of what it needs to do from there. The body is a pharmacy, right? It can do what it needs to once we can give it that energy, that strength, right? Just like you do with movement, right? We can do with equipment that can get, you know, again, we're not adding things in. We're just ramping up the body so it can then put itself in a position of wellness.
Yeah, I think starting to take that approach with, you know, what our environment is, you know, we are products of that environment. We eat items that turn into our physical cells. So you are what you eat is a real thing, right? So I think I heard you say, you know, you are the product of what you eat eats.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is a food chain element where all of this carbon is exchanged with a lot of other pieces. Peptides are just a string of those building blocks that you're giving a signal to the body to up or down regulate something that it already knows how to build. So it's a much more natural introduction, I think, to getting the body to favor something desired in the blood work, which I know you guys can talk a little more about that maybe next, about how you start with blood work, go from there, make sure what you are doing both in the protocol and exogenously, if anything, is moving the markers that you're looking for appropriately. And if not, what do you guys do then?
So you nailed it, right? We want to start with a baseline, and blood work is one of those big baselines. Depending on the individual, depending on what they're looking to do, we do get into, again, checking the gut health, right? Checking the genetics. Those three can give us a great foundation, but we don't do anything, or at least we try not to do anything unless we can get into that foundation of blood work, see where they are existing, right? See what their situation is. You feel certain things, but there's a lot of stuff going on inside that you don't know of. So we are very big on getting the data of their specific situation, then putting together a protocol based on their situation, and then reviewing the data on what that protocol did. We're all snowflakes. We're all one of a kind, right? There is no one fix. And so it's very crucial to see where somebody currently stands in their situation, and then to be able to, again, apply something and then see how it reacted. Be your own scientist, right? We don't claim to know everything with any of this. Again, why the Institute is such a big thing, because we want the other experts, we want all the experts to be able to say, okay, well, this person in this situation, based on this data, I see what they're doing. Let's try this and this. And then how does it react? A simple way to understand that, or a way to go deeper into it, is something like kale, for example, right? Everyone talked about kale, and it was this great, it's green, it's leafy, it's got to be nutritious. Well, then they go into the gut health and see a lot of people having trouble digesting the kale, right? So it's causing a problem. So it's, again, one of those situations where, it's not a one size fits all. We want to look at your specific situation, see what your microbiome is doing, if you're able to handle this, and then we keep going from there and tailoring it, constantly being our own scientists and encouraging everyone watching this, no matter who you talk to, you have to be your own scientist. Doctors, pharmacists, nurses, us, we all only know so much based on our experiences. But then we've got to all work together to be our own scientists, and that's why we set those baselines. So yes, starts with blood work, the testing, the data, seeing where they're at, and then putting in a protocol that works very well. A big reason, this protocol, the one that that we do regularly here, biooptimization protocol, is so powerful, is because it works with so many at the cellular level to do that without adding a lot of things to it. And Trip's going to go into what that's doing. But again, it's, we don't want to throw a million things at somebody and then say, okay, you're going to be okay. We want to feel it out and pay attention and reevaluate.
I actually had a client this morning. This might be something I get a quick thought from you guys on. So I was talking with her about some of what I showed you earlier on the board of conversations that I have with our Return to Play clients. We have about 10 conversations for our first 10 sessions that we're planning to have along the way. That's part of the educational component in the Return to Play program. But I was showing you a little bit of it beforehand, and we were talking about this stress, diet, sleep category, and she mentioned that she wasn't sleeping super well. And then I asked her, I know she had blood work recently, I asked her, how did that look? And she was like, well, my cortisol was high, actually, And I was like, well, melatonin and cortisol have this very intricate relationship, and if your cortisol is spiking at the wrong times, you're going to be awake all night and then sleepy during the day and all of this stuff. But she's got peptides that she's using for her knees. Cortisol and peptides. Is that cortisol potentially something that would be down-regulating her body's ability to use those peptides efficiently? Because she's been using them, and we've been kind of chasing our tail just a little bit, because I think there's other factors that we're trying to dial in our Return to Play program. So I'm wondering if she should keep doing the peptides, if it's advisable, let's maybe get a few of these other pieces together first before those peptides are really going to be worth using. What would you guys suggest for this client?
And again, this is coming from a purely coaching and consultative, and, we would want to talk with experts in that space to look at the data, right? Look at her information and see what's going on. But, to the main question, or, the main piece, throwing a lot at somebody at once, it becomes hard to tell what's working and what's not, right? The peptides, and peptides, we'll get into it. It's a chain of amino acids in your body, right? And it's signaling and telling cells how to operate, basically, right? But again, if there are some outlying factors that are throwing that signal off, you could be looking at causing more problems than good. And again, this is where the whole be your own scientist. If you look at a scientist, they only throw certain variables in there one at a time or two at a time. They're not throwing in 20 variables at once and then seeing what's going on. So if you're feeling that, Aaron, right, and that's the beauty of, your coaching ability is, let's not throw everything at somebody. Hey, if something's not working, let's take a step back. But my initial thought to that would be, if that's where your gut's telling you to go, that there could be a signaling issue going on, because that is what peptides are doing. They're signaling. But if there's an interception in that signal, inflammation, right, or like you said, cortisol's taking over that signal, it's going to cause more harm. And so my thoughts, and again, this is just purely from a consultative and coaching idea of the science, or the understanding the science, and saying, look, let's take out all of the things and let's go to one thing at a time. Let's figure out, like you said, let's get that cortisol down, and then maybe let's get into the peptides. That's initially where I go. Trip, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Well, big part of everything is reducing the inflammation. You said that multiple times, and the medicine's going to go right to where the inflammation is. So you want to get down as much as possible, get rid of the irrelevant stuff so it can go right to the relevant places that need to be healed.
My thought with her is that the cortisol is keeping her from sleeping well, which is keeping you from recovering properly, which is allowing the peptides to not really have their best efficacy. But then she brought up this whole, well, like, I'm pretty sure my cortisol is high because my knees are hurting and I'm upset and aggravated and I'm stressed that, like, I can't do the activities that I'm used to being able to do. So she's like, how do I get out of this? Maybe I'm stressed because of the injury, but the stress is causing the peptides to not help me heal my injury. So, we're kind of in that loop with her, and we're trying to figure out, like, what's our best course of action from this point. And it's essentially, we're focused on stress relief, melatonin supplement at night, maybe try to help rebalance your cortisol timing, because she's like, yeah, I hit low peak in the middle of the day. I feel like I have to take a nap. And I basically, I was like, I might encourage you to take that nap, take the 20 minutes, 30 minutes, close your eyes, maybe just make sure you don't wake up in a point where you're in a deep sleep so that you're groggy and now the rest of your day is shot, but you're more energized. So for those of you who don't nap, I encourage 30 minutes or less of a nap, or 90 minutes of a nap. You don't nap for an hour. That's never a good idea. You're always going to wake up upset, groggy, wrong side of the bed. 90 minutes or so, or less than 30 minutes. But she was telling me, she's like, it spikes up again in the evening, and then I can't go to sleep well, or it's not quality sleep at least. And that's where I'm wondering if her recovery cycle is just not getting any better. So we talked about a couple of things she can try the next couple of days, and we'll see if we get any bit better. But I was just curious if you had run into anyone that's had that cortisol defeat the peptide to a point where it was not.
No, and I just to add to that, you mentioned a few things. First of all, and naps. I mean, they're showing studies that naps are powerful, right? That reset in the middle of the day, 20-minute nap. As you mentioned, there's a certain time, right? You can't go too long, but they're showing something. I saw something where it took 6 years off the life of the brain from doing naps regularly. So very powerful. And a big thing that you brought in there too, the cortisol, the nervous system, right? When Trip, again, when he gets into in depth into the protocol, a big focus is always that nervous system. That's that stress response. You can't heal if you're in fight or flight.
And that's what I fear. She's cortisol high.
Because the body's protecting everything. It's like, wait a second, we got to heal ourselves first. We can't take all this other stuff going on. I mean, you are nailing it with the stress response, down regulating that nervous system. We have a great piece of equipment, a PEMF mat, that is really beautiful at down regulating that nervous system. And breath work, obviously those are things you get into. But it sounds to me like, again, from a purely just outsider looking in, you're on top of it with its nervous system regulation that she's got to focus on really before she gets into adding any of these things, because the body's just blocking it.
And that's one of the reasons why we have such a thorough assessment, and this process is more than just a single day, is because we do have a little bit of seeing how the tissues respond, seeing how the whole body responds, seeing if this is something that's not healing like it should. What is it that's driving that progress? Is it lifestyle factors? Is it hormonal factors? Is it environmental factors? Is it combinations? Usually it's a combination of things. So that's where we really try and find that full picture for people, and then understand the blood work in conjunction with what they're experiencing to make the best call possible. So I guess let's transition just a little bit. Trip, if you want to give us just a little full rundown of the full protocol. I know there's 5 main steps. Each has a powerful component to it. So I think we've mentioned it enough times. People are probably curious. about it now. So let's have you go ahead and give us that rundown.
The biooptimization protocol is something that has evolved after many years. We've gone through and we've done it specific ways. We've worked with different clients, and now we've put it into a really good spot where we feel comfortable, where this is the process we want to use, be very consistent with it as far as the process and the steps, so we can gather that data and show that when we combine all the different award-winning white paper equipment that we're using, that when you bring them together in strategic protocols and the right steps, that they work faster and more efficiently. And that's our goal, is to optimize the experience. And so step number one is we always start with the priming. Basically, step number one, we start with the priming process. And like Jason said, it's a big part of down-regulating the nervous system. We want to get them in there. They're coming off the street. They have all these external things kind of holding them back, whether it's financial, family, business, whatever it is. This is their time. They're coming in here. We want them to get into that position where they're not only comfortable, relaxed, but then their body, their cells, they're ready to accept the healing. And so with that step one priming, we're using the PEMF, pulse electromagnetic frequency, or in this case, what we're using is PEMA, molecular activation. And what this is doing, it's sending a very intelligent, chaotic frequency into the body to help it recover, stimulate blood flow, cellular regeneration, down-regulating the nervous system, but then also preparing it for step two, which is oxygenation. And just to finish with step one, we're able to stack a handful of things during that process to really stimulate it. A big thing that we're doing now is we're adding photobiomodulation, and a very strategic one, which is adding heat. So not only are we getting the light on the body to help with that mitochondrial stimulation, but then we're getting the heat to once again prepare it for step number two, which is oxygenation. And that oxygenation part is really a big part of what's got me to this place of healing and wellness. So when you typically think of oxygen therapy, you think of recovery style oxygen, 90%, like hyperbaric chambers or EWAT. But it's actually the science and studies behind high altitude oxygen, or less percentage of oxygen, somewhere around 8 to 14%, is won the Nobel Prize in 2019 on how the body and cells adapt and react to breathing that high altitude air or gas. And so when you're using that hyperbaric style oxygen, the cells and the tissues can only absorb so much oxygen. So what we're doing is we're creating a demand by using the high altitude oxygen. And we do specific breath work, very efficient with our breathing, all the way to empty lungs, slowing our breath per minute down, and very relaxed breathing. The whole process, for the most part, we're keeping them in that relaxed parasympathetic nervous system state. So with the high altitude oxygen, we go through some strategic breath work, create a demand, and when that demand is created, we drop into hypoxia below 92 or 93, and the body goes through a fight or flight. It increases red blood cells, and it also increases oxygen demand in your tissue, and that's brain tissue as well. So once that demand is created, then we flood it with the 90% recovery style oxygen, and it just soaks up into the tissue and cells far more efficiently. Also in the oxygen process, I definitely want to state is there's athletic performance happening as well. You are stimulating EPO, or erythropoietin, and that's what Lance Armstrong did synthetically and unnaturally in the Tour de France to win. So by breathing at high altitude oxygen, once again, that Nobel Prize award-winning science is stating that you're increasing the erythropoietin, which is maximizing your athletic performance. So we're getting the healing, the wellness, the blood, the alkalinity of the system, but then you're also getting the athletic performance. And then we're getting into the third step, which is the activation. And that is where we implement micro impact technology, which is similar but also far different than your typical vibration plates. Most vibration plates way too agitating, on the tissue, brain tissue as well. So people like myself with concussion issues in the past, when you're on the typical shake plate, you're getting a lot of that TBI symptoms coming back. It's tough on the soft tissue, joints, ligaments, and it's also sending that agitating vibration inside of your bones. And what we're doing with the micro impact is the exact opposite. We're able to send very healing, strategic vibration into the bones, strengthening the bones, making them more dense, making the bones more malleable and flexible. And also, it's stimulating intelligently and properly the metabolic system inside of your bones, increasing red blood cells. That's where your white blood cells are made, your immune system. But then it's also getting into your steps per day, 20, 30,000 steps per day. So in all that process, we're able to send that very strategic healing vibration into the body. Also during that process, we're using photobiomodulation red light therapy, getting it really close to the skin, helping it absorb more efficiently, getting into the external, the hair, the skin. But then we're also getting into something very unique with the frequencies. We're using 10, 20, and especially 40 hertz to help reduce the inflammation on the brain and also reduce the plaque buildup on the brain. So that 40 hertz is a ton of white paper studies showing how when you utilize that, and that's something you don't even have to be right close like most red light therapy, you can get that through the eyes into the brain. And it's really, the way I like to describe it, it's almost like it's petting the brain. People really feel that calmness through that process. And then we're getting into some of the more advanced techniques or pieces of equipment where a huge new part of what we're doing is vestibular training, where just by doing some basic spinning clockwise, counterclockwise, we're able to rewire the rewire the senses, balance and the cochlear, basically inside of the ear where we have all the crystals and the system in there. So by doing some light spinning, we're able to add that balance to the brain. And for someone like me, once again, with concussion issues, it doesn't take much. Very slow spinning and moving the eyes left and right, head up and down, different focal points. We're adding so much stimulation, especially after we've already oxygenated, primed the body. And that's like with these advanced modalities, getting in the cold plunge, lymphatic drainage suits, and so many different other things, including regenerative medicine. Once we get the body primed and we create that, the chi, the prana energy, we get everything flowing, then everything that we do externally just works that much better because the body's more bioavailable to accept everything else from that point on.
And this is where I think having you guys involved with the return to play system is so mutually beneficial, because that's what a lot of the clients I've had over the last decade have all been potentially held back by what I'm doing, because they're not addressing some of these more core pieces that are that foundational point, which I showed you in the pyramid that we have on our talk. The bottom piece is volume and recovery. How much volume can I tolerate right now, and how do I maximize my recovery? If you're not recovering from the training we're doing, then we're just constantly chasing our tail. So putting a big emphasis on that recovery, having you guys involved from the start for those who need the extra assistance, especially getting the blood work, making sure we're tackling what we need to from that, getting them a couple of sessions through your protocol while we're in the early stages will only help what I have to have my clients do in order to relearn these motor patterns that much more effective, because their nervous system's ready to learn that, their body and their tissues are ready to accept new protein synthesis building, new ranges of motion that maybe weren't accessible before. The tissue has to grow and become more pliable, and we need to talk about hydration because fascia is so tied to hydration. So all these little pieces come together and allowing that person's body to really fully reopen and be as pliable and athletic as it should be able to be. I think it's a pretty awesome protocol, and I'm excited to see how it starts to help my clients in their journey. And then your guys' 90-day test that you're trying to do with the youth coming up that you were telling me about sounds really cool. I'm interested to see how that all unfolds. As far as the regenerative medicine side goes. You mentioned a third of the time is about how fast your clients are healing. Do you have any other thoughts on, I don't know if you already had the protocol kind of in place when you started seeing those numbers? Is this more of the peptide group that is healing that fast? Is it, a portion of that comes from the protocol, a portion of that comes from the peptides and the IVs and some of that? What can you kind of clear up for that?
So the beauty again, so the protocol is what's doing that data. The peptides are a newer, again, all research based, right? So we're talking with individuals and going through their specific situation. Those are bonuses, right? That protocol alone is able to do that, speeding up the recovery. As Trip had mentioned, it's a performance and recovery piece. Huge for elite athletes, huge for brain trauma, huge for chronic inflammation. I mean, again, because this is a public conversation, there's only so much I can get into, but you're talking elite athlete to chronically inflamed. You're talking, again, brain, you're talking, all the different levels of recovery, right? We say recovery and performance, you think instantly athlete and sports, but it is something that's going all the way to the inflammation level in a chronically diseased individual. But again, it's all, that protocol handles so much by itself. It's why we love it. It's why it's the core to everything. Everything from there becomes enhancements. The peptides become enhancements, especially with, it's still a gray area, right? It's technically banned in a lot of spaces. And that's why everything is for research only. And the conversations that we have, we explain the situation and really where these things stand. But those are just enhancements, and those are enhancements in everything from repair, right? We're getting into things. So, just to touch on a couple, right? MOTS-C is a big peptide for energy, ATP, increasing that cellular energy. Again, we want to focus on the cellular level. BPC 157, you're getting into repair peptides. There was actually, I just saw Dr. Will Cole make a post yesterday about decreasing inflammation 50% faster using BPC and TB500. Now, then Trip and I talk, and we talk about someone we were talking with about combining those two and how there needs to be spaces in between. So there's still, this peptides world is still very new. It's still something that we're still looking at the data, then checking it, then looking at the data again. But there's a lot of promise with it. And then from those, we get into things like Selenk and Samac, which start talking about anxiety and stress, and then getting into nootropic sides of those, right? And then getting into, there's the skin care that's going on with the peptides with GHKCU. I think I touched on majority. Epitalin is a big one for longevity, right? But again, these are all enhancements going on top of the data that Trip had already mentioned to you with the recovery, things that we're really excited to work with. But you don't need all the stuff necessarily. As you mentioned before, the body is doing a lot of this work. So if we can get out of the way, give the cells what they need to do it, they're going to get that third of a time recovery, sometimes faster, without getting into peptides. But those peptides, they're showing some incredible results.
Right. And that just brought one piece that I have to talk to a lot of people about up, which is over-relying on things like ibuprofen and Advil and stuff like that, where they're dampening the body's natural inflammation response. Like, it's inflamed for a reason. It's trying to heal something. So I try and get people very particular about when they choose to need to use ibuprofen or something versus like, well, your body's telling you something. Maybe you find a different way other than pharmaceutically to decrease the inflammation in that spot. Maybe a little bit of ice temporarily or some compression. Try and just flush the inflammation back out and back in, because that will bring more healing cells to the area. That inflammation is a signal. It's not something that you need to be scared of. So just because you feel a little something doesn't mean immediately take ibuprofen, because now your entire body's inflammation system is going to be dampened. So it just puts you back in that loop that we kind of talked about. It's a little bit of a different loop, but your body doesn't know what to do because you keep telling it to stop sending inflammatory things to the people or the places that it needs to heal. So that's just another intervention I know a lot of people over-rely on, that I have to have that conversation, which I'm like, if it's going to limit you from doing what you need to do that day, okay, maybe take ibuprofen that day. But if it's just going to be a little bit nagging and a little bit of ice makes it from a 6 to a 3 or a 2, then maybe you just need to hang out and deal with the 2 or 3 for the day and let your body do what it needs to heal that knee or whatever the area is, and and stop blunting it with that.
Well, what we're seeing with a lot of the research and studies now is a lot of these medications, even like Tylenol, are not as good for the body as we thought. You know, the reduction or limiting the production of glutathione is a big part of the recovery process. And so I think we need to be very aware and start to educate ourselves on what we're putting in our body, especially when it's coming from the mainstream health system. There's so many different other avenues and ways to research now. It's like, let's not, just take the mainstream type of medication. Let's figure out, the best way to heal, the natural products for our body that assimilates, efficiently and well, and instead of agitating the body like all these other kind of over-the-counter medications have done all these years.
I think going back to just trying to maintain the holistic approach, your body is what it eats. Putting something in that's synthetically made in a lab doesn't sound like anything your body's ever really going to be fully accepting of. So yeah, it might help with this one thing, but what 3 things does it dysregulate? Mm-hmm. And I think we're starting to realize that, these medications we've been using for a couple decades, they help with this one thing, but they have these 3 other things that they cause. And then you take another pill to take those side effects off, but they also have their 2 side effects each. So now you went from 1 pill to now 3 pills with 7 different side effects, and then it just starts to amplify. So helping people take that scientific approach with themselves and be like, okay, well, maybe I'm gonna try this before and after. Did it work? Okay, no, let me try this next natural remedy, whether it's hot compress, essential oils. I just had a nice trip to the apothecary the other day, and Tyler was getting a handful of different things because, we just had our seasonal shift here. So I, just like most of us here in the area, have been dealing with some stuffiness and a little whatever cold may have been going around last week. So she was getting me mullein, tea tree oil. They call it Formula 83 at the apothecary we go to. It's just a combination of golden seal, echinacea, and a few of these other pieces in a tincture. That's basically like a holistic antibiotic type of, try this first. If it doesn't help, then we might go get a real antibiotic. But we're still trying those things first, knowing that it comes from a much more acceptable to the body type of place. I think more people need to at least understand and try those first before you go straight to the over-the-counter stuff, because as you said, those are starting to become less and less clean for the body in our eyes with the latest research. So
yeah, and I don't know, Trip, if you could tell it, I was gonna say that was good. Trip brought up a great point, and you're diving deeper into it. The part of just the knowledge and the information we have these days, right? The medical system is changing. And it's not that these people were bad, or, generally speaking, doctors and, the people that were learning these things about the medications and giving those, it was what they were taught. It's what went on in their schooling system. I learned, it's crazy that, doctors get like a day of nutrition, I think it is, in their schooling, right? So, you can't really blame them. It's what was taught to them, and they were, again, being efficient with what they knew. And then you look at something like medication, and you look at, even just the way a lot of stuff's treated these days over here in the States. It's served its purpose for certain things, right? You get your arm cut off, you're not going to, we're not going to put you on the protocol and have you heal that arm right then and there, right? You need to go to the doctors, you need to get that taken care of. And a lot of that quick acting synthetics can solve the problem and help. But, to your point, and then to what you're doing there, the world is changing back into that understanding of the body and what can go in to the body to kind of work a little bit more cohesively. And, the things you mentioned, right? You're going into the microbiome, the honey, right, is one that a lot of people are doing for this seasonal change and the allergies that come on. It's as simple as that. But again, it's tough because there is a lot of negative talk of, the way the medical world has been going, and it served its purpose. I think it also created a lot of awareness, right? And awakening to where we're at right now. I look at something like COVID, and there was a blessing in it. It brought a lot of attention to what's going on and why we can't keep relying on these drugs and medications. We need to learn different ways. So, I just wanted to take that and point out, it's been kind of this circle where, we know that our ancestors were doing exactly what you said way back then. And then technology came, and the scientists said, hey, you know what? This arm that just got cut off, we got to stop the bleeding. We got to get rid of the disease that's going on. What's a good, quick way we can do that? Well, it served its purpose, but now we're kind of coming back and being like, okay, well, you know what? We went a little too far with that. That wasn't what we needed for most situations, the chronic situations. So it's kind of cool, and we're kind of at an exciting time that we're able to have this conversation and talk about how we're coming back to these natural solutions that you and Tyler are going to pick up at the apothecary.
Yeah, I think it's a pendulum swinging back and forth, and you know, I think we're starting to find that there's some sort of balance that we need to have with the way the Eastern medicine world has looked at things for a long time, and all this cool innovation happening on the Western medicine side. And now, how can they both exist? And the pharmaceutical side, I think, is the biggest like headbutt to the Eastern modalities. Is, you know, just expecting that a pill can fix this thing. Right? There's almost always an environmental, a lifestyle, or a nutritional change that can solve most everything. I think with the autoimmune diseases we're finding, the carnivore stuff is really helpful, and then with certain other things, certain diets are helpful. So it's, you know, an intervention that can be pretty powerful if you've never paid attention to your food. The other aspect going into the whole be your own scientist, the first thing they usually start to teach you when you start getting potty trained is to start turn around and like assess. Some people forget that, but that's your biggest and first defense as far as understanding how your body is digesting things. If you see it come out the other end, you're not digesting it, and you probably just should stop eating that thing. Find another green to replace that with, or find another something, because that one doesn't, you're missing whatever you need to digest that thing, and that's just not going to serve you to keep eating that. So I think that goes back to the kale you were talking about, right?
So it can be very beneficial.
Yeah, tell me about the exosomes and all. What have you guys been hearing about that side of thing? I know that's another offering that is out there, but maybe more of one of the new ones. So what have you guys been hearing there?
Yeah. So again, you know, these are things that we are going to the experts in that space, and they are taking care of, you know, what needs to be done in that process. But exosomes, we are hearing more and more incredible results. I mean, there was even some results of someone getting hearing back that was happening because of the exosomes, right? You've got a lot of tissue repair and, you know, different. I'm struggling on this one.
Or even different cognitive enhancements, spiritual enhancements, able to get to, with the exosomes, they're able to use an aerosol delivery. So we were able to get right through the blood-brain barrier. And that's something with exosomes makes it very powerful. There's smaller delivery system of stem cells that can assimilate into the body, the tissue far better. And so not only are you getting the physical, youthful, anti-inflammation type stuff with the body, the youthfulness that we're all looking for, but then through a lot of the people we're working with, they're showing improvement in mental, cognitive clarity and function, but then also getting into the spiritual side of things. I've said it probably 4 different times, the blood flow to the brain, pumping through the pineal gland, actually giving people that spiritual awareness, that connection with their higher power, is something that people lack and miss a lot in our lives. That could be why we're so upset or agitated, or even lack that connection with the world, because we're not able to connect with ourselves correctly. So that's with a lot of what we're doing. We're rewiring the body, helping people subconsciously just be better human beings, but then also sending the most high level stimulation to make that process happen just far more efficiently.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm excited to see how all of these different modalities continue to grow as more and more studies are coming out, and we're hearing more evidence of people having this thing that we thought was uncurable. Well, someone had progress there. Let's explore that more. And now this could be eventually how we secure fixing blindness and hearing loss and some of these things that used to just be, oh, that's just a natural part of aging, or oh, you're just one of those percentage of people that at 30 you're just going to go blind.
And just all the cognitive brain issues too out there with the Alzheimer's, the stuff that, you know, just the past 20, 30 years have just skyrocketed. So that's what's very exciting about the future of this industry.
You know, as you had mentioned, just like with the peptides, right? These exosomes are things that already exist in your body, right? You know, everyone's been hearing of stem cells. And so exosomes are coming from stem cells. The exciting part that's coming out from the research of the exosomes is that they are adapting to the body much better because they don't have those signaling issues that stem cells can have. And so you don't typically have to worry about, I mean, they're saying 100%. I always get nervous saying 100% in anything, but they're saying that there is no rejection in the data that they're seeing from exosomes. So it's allowing, us to get, as Trip had mentioned, that healing throughout the whole body all the way through crossing the blood-brain barrier without necessarily having to worry about rejection. And again, all of these are just things that the body already has. We're all here. That's the beauty of this group and everything you got going here is everyone's trying to utilize what the body's already got going. And I know, that's a big thing with your Return to Play program that you've got. I know you guys do an amazing job really getting the body to a place, the mind and the body to a place where so much healing can occur just from that without adding anything to it. We're really excited to be teaming up with you guys in that Return to Play program and being able to show people how powerful the body really is.
Yeah, I think it's something a lot of people can relate to. We have a rampant ADD crisis and a rampant depression crisis. And the opposite of depression is play. And that was a quote I got reminded of recently again. And it's just nice hearing that because that's something I definitely noticed. And a lot of my clients that were just coming to work out, it wasn't fun for them. So when they would stop training with me, they would just stop training. And I'm like, well, if I'm the reason you're coming, then it's not going to ever be anything you're going to stick with. So it has to be fun if you're going to do it when I'm not there. So that's where this whole facility came into play. No pun intended. Calisthenics, isometric exercises was how I help people fix function. It's more fun. It's going to be more engaging throughout the journey of the decades that it's going to take to stay consistent, because it doesn't work if you work out for a year here, 2 years there, 6 months here, fall off, gain weight, blah, 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 all of the back and forth and all of that. You just got to be consistent. You're only going to be consistent if you enjoy it and it's some type of play for you. And if your only form of play is going to a bar and socializing, you're missing out on a lot of other options in the world. And then you're doing an activity that promotes fat gain, inhibits protein synthesis, defeats recovery. So you're picking a pastime that is defeating you each time you do it versus a pastime helping build your neural capacity and your coordination and all of these things. So pick your play. But the whole point of our Return to Play program is to help you find the thing that you miss doing and get you back to doing it. And I think having you guys as part of our team of preferred practitioners, we can help people unblock those things that are stopping them from healing, like the client I was talking about earlier. I think some couple of sessions on the protocol might be really good for her to help open up and find that parasympathetic state a little bit, help re-regulate her cycles. So I'll be chatting with her about that. And you guys are doing some sort of intro offer for our Return to Play clients. So we'll make sure that we touch base and send them over to you guys. I know we're still finalizing exactly what it might look like, but there will be some sort of no-brainer. Take them up on it. Get that first protocol in, learn what they have to do and what the Biooptimization Institute can, help you as far as getting healed as fast as possible. So I appreciate you guys coming on. Do you have any last pieces you want to add?
What's great about the Return to Play program, personally for me, is obviously we're going to be helping our clients and we're going to be implementing this program, running the business. But selfishly, this is great for myself. I'm still going through the issues I've put myself in through all these years. I want that accountability. I want that perfect health program created for me as well. I know so much in the industry, Jason knows so much, but then to combine with you and the experts you have on your team, it's just going to accelerate my process. And this is a science fair project that we're all going through. And I'm excited to see my results because I am the representation of what this program can do. And that's to live the best version of myself is going to be great to not only have that for my life, for my family, my friends, but then to grow this business as efficiently as possible, as intelligently as possible, and for me to just be every single day showing up with that shine and that energy, that voltage in my system that I claim that we do, for our clients. So that's what I'm excited about as well. And I know Jason, Jesse, and everyone's going through our own health experience and all of our families. So when we're able to share this, basically our goal is to duplicate this and expand this into everyone that we surround ourselves with. And that's how we change the world.
Very cool. How about you, Jason? Any last words for today?
No, just again, the excitement of the minds that you've brought together, and how appreciative we are to be able to be a part of this, because you can see the cohesiveness going on. As Trip had mentioned, we've got our own issues. That's part of why we've gotten to this place, is because of trying to figure those out, right? And so to be able to be in a space like this where we are with like-minded individuals and can heal ourselves and help ourselves, help our family. Trip, you mentioned that one, which is a big one. I don't think people really realized how much your parents and taking care of your parents becomes a thing of life as you get older, right? And so that's why I love your program, and especially the return to play concept, to return to being kids, and even starting with the kids, right? So that they don't get to the points that we're at, or the points we see our parents at, right? To be able to start that early and young. So there's just so much, gratitude that I've got for what you've built, to be able to be a part of that. Obviously, to be working with Trip and being able to dive deeper into our challenges physically, and then the ones mentally, and then the ones that our family and friends have. So it's just, it's an exciting time to be alive, man. And so grateful that you had us on. I can't wait to talk more about the results that we get from everything that we're doing.
I love it. Well, thank you both for chatting today. They are one of the numerous preferred practitioners that we are going to have in our Return to Play network. This is going to be a 10, 12, 15, potentially more size group of different practitioners with different specialties, so that whoever comes into our assessment, I go through their whole life, basically. What limitations, what goals, how do we get you there? What have you tried? What do you think you need? What you actually need is what I help you determine. And then who do I think in our network is going to be a piece to help unblock something that's blocked, so that what I do in Return to Play movement coaching actually has the ability to hold itself, whether it's they need the biooptimization parasympathetic reset, or if they need a trigger point fascial release, or if they need actually to go back to physical therapy, but maybe to a physical therapist who is empowering their patient to take control of their healing, not just hooking them up to a stim machine and telling them you're a diagnosis and you're just going to have to do this thing each time you come in and we'll hope that you're better in 10 sessions, but actually helping you figure out what movements are going to be okay, how do I get back to rock climbing or golfing, whatever it is. We've got pelvic floor specialists, concussion experts. So I have a team of different people that I've been vetting for the last couple of years while we've been putting this building together, that I'm excited to start featuring on the podcast, doing content promotion stuff with, and letting everyone see how involved this really is going to be. And it really is going to come down to each expert in their individual field, kind of like what you guys are doing with your bio-optimizing world, not biohacking, bio-optimizing. I'm trying to do with the corrective exercise world. I'm getting all the different pieces, different practitioners. You're specializing in pelvic floor, you specialize in concussion chiropractic, you specialize in knees, hips, back, whatever. I want to know that little piece so that I can send people to the right person accordingly. So a little bit of a concierge type service, I guess you could say, something I realized I was already doing as a personal trainer, helping people navigate their unfortunate healthcare system that they're stuck in, usually the insurance model. I'm a big component of the cash pay system and some of these other things like Crowd Health. If you have not heard of Crowd Health, I definitely encourage you to check out. Join Crowd Health on Instagram. They are doing something quite a bit different where they're empowering the crowd to really take charge and not accept the current insurance model, but instead you as a group are cash paying for everyone's incidences, whether it's catastrophic or proactive. You're only at most out $500. That's the deductible, but the crowd pays for the rest. And because it's cash pay, they have a care advocate for you that calls the hospital and says, hey, why did you charge my client $100,000 for this last visit? I see you charged $1,000 for a saline bag 10 times. I see you did this, 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 and they'll negotiate that down to like $15,000. And then the crowd pays $15,000. So that's how the crowd can still pay so little, is because you're actually cash paying collectively, right? So they don't like the word insurance, but it is a system that has been working well. I've been a part of it for 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years now. Had to use it a couple of times, but I've only ever paid $500. And then I get a request once a month that says, hey, so-and-so needs help with a pregnancy. Can we get $130? So I only ever pay between $150 and $250 per my wife and I. And then that covers pretty much anything that could happen. So things like that are what I've been looking for the last several years that will help change that system and help people really understand that there is another way and there are options, and try and be that light in that scary looking healthcare system that has become what we're so unfortunately familiar with. I've had too many clients say they have to go to this and then this and then this before they can get the image, that I'm just like, you should just go to this guy and they'll do it for $150, but you don't have to wait 6 weeks and you don't have to see 3 more people. Just go pay and just do it now, because I'm going to tell you they're going to make you get that image anyways. Oh, I have to go get the x-ray first, then I have to get this, and then they'll do the MRI. Like, well, you should just go get the MRI. So we're trying to help you all avoid that. So come check out the Return to Play program. Go check out the Biooptimization Institute. Together we're going to be creating some magic.